All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Elizabeth Bowe, and I'm the Program Director for Episcopal Parish Network. And I am delighted that you are joining us for our Holy Land, Faithful People, Powerful Witness conversation around the Diocese of Jerusalem, and particularly St. George's College. We are thrilled to welcome the Reverend Barclay Thompson, who is the rector of St. Mark's Church in Little Rock, Arkansas, and who's also the president of the North American Committee for St. George's College. And especially pleased to welcome back the Very Reverend Canon Richard Sewell, who's the Dean of St. George's College, and thrilled also that Andrew Sherman, who is the Vice President of the North American Committee for St. George's College, is here with us today. So we ask that you post questions in the chat as you feel so called, and they will do their best to get to as many of those as they can after they offer this update, which I'm sure will be both powerful, inspiring, and challenging. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Barclay.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. It's so great to be with everybody. This is, I think, the third time in the last 2 years that Richard and I have been online with EPN for these sorts of webinars and these sorts of updates. And we're so very thankful for the partnership with the Episcopal Parish Network for being such gracious hosts, both when we have been live and in person at the annual EPN conference and also on these webinars. It's always a joy to be with you and to be able to connect with so many people through this sort of venue. My name is Barclay Thompson. I am the outgoing president of the North American Committee for St. George's College. In fact, I think this webinar is my last official responsibility. My good friend and colleague Andrew Sherman, who has been serving as the vice president, is becoming the president, and he will lead us from strength to strength. And I'm so pleased that he's taking on that role. My friend Richard Sewell is with us. Richard has been the Dean of St. George's College since 2018. He reminded me just a few moments ago that I think my airplane was leaving Ben Gurion Airport to head back to the States from a pilgrimage as his airplane was landing, probably from London Heathrow, to assume his role as dean. But we've worked very closely over the years together. Richard has seen the college first through COVID, which was a very challenging time. And then, of course, most recently, these past 3 years, 2 years, as the conflict in Gaza and beyond Gaza has raged and hopefully is now reaching a new chapter as we move through the peace process, the tenuous peace process, nonetheless. So, Richard, Richard has been in the United States now for a week. He has been traveling all over the East Coast. We were together earlier this week at Virginia Theological Seminary for our annual meeting. He's been able to be in front of so many audiences, and will be other opportunities through the National Cathedral and others to see some of those recorded as time goes on, and those other opportunities are published in the next coming weeks. But for this conversation, Richard, we want to talk mostly about the college and what it has happened with the college, what will be happening with the college as we emerge and reopen. Although, as you have said repeatedly, we've never really closed, but as pilgrims return to the college. And I want to start just by asking you personally. The last 2 years have been unprecedented. They've been unpredictable. They've been challenging and tough. And I'm interested for you to share with our friends what has sustained you through this time, and how has your leadership of St. George's College changed over the last 2 years?
Well, thank you, Barclay, and thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks to the EPN network for giving a chance to share and give an update on the continually changing situation in Jerusalem and throughout our diocese. It has been an extraordinarily challenging and difficult 2 years plus. We had a group of pilgrims with us in October 2023. It was an explosion of violence that day, which, to be honest, nobody really knew the full nature of it at the time. Details really took days, weeks, actually even months to develop. But as always, our concern was to keep our pilgrims safe, which we did. We did not evacuate them immediately. We gave everybody the option of doing that and gave them, a wide variety. This is how you can do it. We can do a group decision, or you can do individual decisions. We actually stayed in the land for nearly a week after October the 7th, and eventually it became clear that This was not going to die down quickly. Nobody had any idea it was going to be years long. And we safely evacuated everybody by a variety of different means, different exits. And from that day to this, we've not had a single pilgrim group coming. And that alone has a profound effect on morale, on the staff, me personally and my wife, Julianne, the other international staff, and the local staff in some ways even more, because whilst we, the internationals, always have a chance to decide to get on the plane and go home, maybe call it a day, which, to be honest, was never on my heart to do, though we had to discuss it now and again. Is it right? We always, Julianne and I, felt we are called to be here, to face the challenges, to be with our staff. So knowing that you are there for a reason rather than just being trapped, I think actually is quite a strong motivational factor anyway. And what sustained us, I think, was wanting to be there for our staff, feeling a sense of duty and responsibility to them, the commitment that I shared with Barclay and our international boards, that as the war went on and on, that actually I felt it was really important that we showed a deep level of commitment to our staff. And rather than, what all the hotels around and many of the cafes did, simply closed down, laid the staff off and said, we'll have to wait for better days to come. Nobody thought that would be 2 years plus. I did not want to do that. And I was supported in that by Archbishop Hussam and Barclay and the rest of the board, because we have strong commitments to our staff. We talk about us being a type of a family that have been together. People have been working for the college, some of them for 30 years, some of them their father, maybe even their grandfather worked there before. And simply to shed people because you're in challenging times did not feel ethically right to me. So I had to be there, to be the sort of the rock at the center of it. And to oversee the raising of money, which by the grace of God and a sort of almost miracle, we raised the money that has enabled us to keep the staff on, some full-time, some part-time, with no income coming in really from pilgrims throughout the time. And, I think for morale, despite all the other knocks and the dreadful heartbreak that we and they have all experienced, that has been something that has kept us going and being together. So although there's been very little to do, the staff have come in every day. And, part of my role is to keep the spirits up. And sometimes they keep my spirits up. And, people have good days, bad days at different times. And just having that purpose of coming in, sharing with each other, sharing our griefs and our fears and our deep sadness because of the devastation of Gaza and actually the tightening tourniquet around the life of Palestinians in the West Bank in a whole variety of ways. The news every day, as people will know, has been so traumatic and difficult. And we there, people around the world can log in, log out as much as they feel they can. We live it and breathe it every day. We can't escape it. And so sharing together, not always talking through all the details because sometimes we're exhausted, but taking care and concern over each other, knowing that everybody is dealing with heartbreak. And that's been really important. I've been sustained actually knowing that people are praying for us around the world. I get so many messages from people in all parts of the world saying, Richard, just know that we pray for you and pray for your staff and the diocese every day. And those prayers have been answered by the sustaining of us through incredibly challenging times. And just knowing that people are praying, it also raises morale. In addition to those things, I've had to reconstitute what it means because with no pilgrim groups coming. We have had visitors. We have had solidarity visits. We've had people from NGOs who we've got links with coming, and they've chosen to stay in the college, which I've really appreciated because it's given a little drip of some money. But basically not the groups at all that we rely upon. So I've developed a ministry and advocacy to get stories out, to maybe in some ways correct some of the misinformation that comes out through media sources, and to give, apart from anything else, a sort of feet on the ground, eye level account of what I see, what I hear, what I understand about the reality of the situation. And that has given me a sense of drive and purpose each day, every day, in a variety of different ways, to be able to witness to what we're seeing and the decimation that we have experienced, and to try to make sure that if the media attention flows off it for a bit, which does happen, that our supporters and our friends don't lack the information, and that feels like it's been appreciated, and it has certainly been good for me. So then alongside that, the solidarity visits, particularly by some bishops and Church of England bishops, which has helped to change the narrative, and to in a time when it felt like many of the church leaders and many politicians abandoned us and failed to do the things that we felt were absolutely morally, ethically, and politically necessary, that we have been able to get some key opinion formers in bishops to be able to come and visit, to see things, to meet people, to hear things, and then to go back and to testify to the, I mean, it's not exaggerating, but to say the horrors that have been visited upon our people, our churches, the Palestinian people. And of course, Jewish Israelis have been profoundly impacted too. And there are channels of communication for those experiences. So yeah, it's not been a quiet time. It's been full, and in many ways fulfilling, because of a deep sense of Christian purpose.
Well, so you've said so much there. Your witness is so important. The realization that, particularly in Gaza, there are no international reporters. The only reporting in Gaza is coming from Gazans in Gaza, and to have you and others who are so close proximately and are dealing with the situation from East Jerusalem, having your voice has been so important. Most people on this webinar will not know that you and I have a conversation, a video conversation every other week, and that's been so important to me. In a way that is so very first world. I have felt myself ministered to by you as you have dealt with the trauma, and so I'm so grateful for that. You also mentioned the fundraising, and I should take a moment to thank all of the people on this webinar today who have participated in our Let Light Shine campaign that the North American Committee and the other regional international committees have mounted. Our goal was $1.2 million. We exceeded that goal. Gifts and pledges continue to come in, which have sustained, as you said, allowed us to support our staff at the college, to sustain the physical plant at the college, to be able to carry out its mission in other ways during this 2 years, and to ready the college for what we know will be the next crisis down the road until the Lord returns. So thanks to all of those who have made that campaign so fruitful and have been so faithful in supporting us. Let's turn then to what it looks like for St. George's College moving forward. Some will know already and have seen on social media that I will be the chaplain to a pilgrimage that will come to St. George's College next September. My friend and colleague Andrew Sherman is planning a pilgrimage similarly next fall. The college is open for business, and international American airlines are not, U.S. carriers are not flying directly to the Holy Land yet, but are working with their partner code share airlines. If you go to United Airlines site, you can book flights because they code share with Lufthansa and Swiss Air and others, as well as through the other American carriers. Don't mean to privilege United Airlines, but the other American carriers. So people are thinking about returning and are making plans to return, and we're so excited about that. We'll talk as this webinar goes on about how that might look a little different this year, but as moving into the future. But for now, for someone who's considering coming on pilgrimage to the Holy Land, what would you say to them about the safety of visiting the holy sites in Palestine, Israel, and the safety of staying at St. George's College? What words can you offer to those who are beginning to open their hearts and souls to that kind of pilgrimage today?
Thanks, Barclay. Well, I think people are surprised when I do say that actually it is safe now, and that if a group, miraculously said, we'll come in the first week of January, that would be fine. Not totally straightforward, but that's always been the case here. And I have always, from the very beginning in 2018, had emails, especially as it happens from Americans, saying, is it safe for us to come to Jerusalem?
Let me interrupt you very quickly and just tell you the briefest anecdote. When I was trying to make my first trip, which I ultimately made in 2016, I had been moving a deposit forward, I think, for 2 years. And I finally I said to Genia Stephen, our registrar at the college, whom I had not met yet, I emailed her and said, I may push this forward until things are a little bit calmer. And she emailed me back with tough love and said, Father Thompson, if you're waiting for things to calm down in the Holy Land, you'll never visit the Holy Land. And I took her at her word, and I made that first pilgrimage. And as so many say, as soon as we were on the college campus, I felt cared for and safe. Not uncritically unwary. I mean, as one always does when one travels internationally. It was important to keep my eyes and ears open. But so sorry, I just wanted to add that as you were talking. Please go on.
That's so true. And it was one of the things I was going to say, that if you're waiting for things to be 100% calm, you'll never come.
Yeah.
But we have expertise in curating pilgrimages when things are challenging. And we have got our ear to the ground, and we have people on the ground, so that if, for instance, we're going to Nablus in the heart of the West Bank to go and visit the Church of Jacob and the Syrophoenician and the Samaritan woman, sorry, at the well, which is such a beautiful site, but it can be a little bit volatile at times. I can just phone our priest, Father Jamil, in Nablus and say, how are things looking today? We've got a group. Is it good to come? And occasionally he'll say, I wouldn't come today. We've had some activity. Let's look next week and see. And we can adapt our programs. And if it's still not safe the next week, we won't go, and we'll fill it with something else that is equally inspiring and engaging. And all over the land, we have got the people on the ground who are in those places and can give, real-time updates on what's happening. And we will never put our pilgrims into places that we don't feel reassured are running safe at the time. And our drivers, all Palestinians, they have family all over, and they do not want to drive into places where they don't feel it's safe. So they will sometimes say to me, "Oh, I've just had a message from my cousin, and he says, maybe we should avoid that road." And that's what we do.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, and I think it's doubly important now. There are so many tour companies and travel groups that will take people to the Holy Land. Those are by and large profit-seeking for-profit revenue-producing enterprises, which is not to say they're bad, but I colloquially refer to those sometimes as Six Flags over Jesus, where Six Flags being, that may be foreign to you, Richard, but that's an American amusement park chain. And so what a lot of tour companies do is they swoop in, they take a coach of people from the airport, they travel into the holy sites, travel out without ever, as we'll talk about later in this conversation, without ever engaging the local people, the living stones, the local context. Um, but so not only do they not have that context as part of those trips, they have a different motive for seeing the sites. It is a profit motive, which is not inherently bad, but changes the risk analysis. The fact of the matter is, St. George's College does not have a profit motive. It is the Anglican center in the Holy Land. And while we hope to produce enough revenue to keep the college running, our purpose is to form and educate prayerfully Anglicans and others from all over the world. And so, as you say, whether it's Nablus or somewhere else, if there's a little bit of unrest, it's a no-brainer for us at the college to simply change our plans. We don't worry about whether or not we're going to lose a little bit of money. What we worry about is the safety and well-being of our pilgrims, and I think that it's just a different kind of risk analysis from anyone else that you would travel to the Holy Land through. And I think it should give our pilgrims a great modicum of comfort, knowing that our only interest is to form our pilgrims and to do so in safety.
All that's so true, and I think people also need to know, if they've not visited St. George's, the cathedral, the college, the close, they'll have no idea what a place of extraordinary calm and peace and safety
sure.
the cathedral close is. And whatever busyness, and Jerusalem is a busy city, full of color, full of noise, without any unrest at all, just on normal, supposedly quiet days.
Yeah.
It's intense and it's busy. That's part of its attraction. But you walk back in through the gates of the college or the cathedral, and you are in an oasis of calm.
Yes,
It's extraordinarily beautiful, and it's a wonderful place at the end of the day, just to process the events of the day. And you don't feel like you are continually meeting new challenges and new stresses, because you can just breathe deeply and you can take a rest, ready for whatever excitement's coming the next day. And we hear this over and over again, and that people say by the end of their time with us, this has really become a home away from home for us. We feel at home and peace here. And go on.
And it's worth noting that quite functionally, the cathedral campus, including the college, is safe because it is a walled enclosure, and we have human security there, and so it is that oasis of peace. But for those who are a little bit skittish about traveling and where they'll stay, even the campus itself is a remarkably secure place, as secure as one could ever hope anywhere would be in any city, I think, across the globe, for sure.
And walking around Jerusalem is almost always, for us as foreigners, internationals, safer than walking downtown in most of the large cities.
Oh, sure. Yeah, most American city. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, unbelievably so. That's so true. Well, let's talk about pilgrimage. Let's talk about the impact of pilgrimage on people's lives. Why would you say so many people talk about how their faith, and I could answer this for myself, because I'd been a priest for 13 years before I made my first pilgrimage to St. George's, and it changed everything. And I'm happy to talk about that, but you see it in so many people. So talk to us about why it is and how it is that people see their lives of faith transformed by a St. George's pilgrimage. And then I mentioned this a little bit, but talk about what's distinctive about pilgrimage through St. George's College. Can you speak to those two things?
Sure. I think it's true that every Christian who takes their faith seriously feels that they already know the Holy Land, because we read the scriptures, both Old Testament and New Testament, and the place names become very familiar to us. The description of them, insofar as the Bible doesn't really give physical description, but we get human stories, the fishermen on the Sea of Galilee, Jesus on the shore, calling out to the fishermen, Peter, James, and John on the sea about, ordinary everyday things. And so in our mind's eye, we create a picture and we feel we know it. So when you come to the land, these place names, whether it's the Garden of Gethsemane, the Mount of Olives, the Mount of Beatitudes, the Sea of Galilee, Nazareth, we've got a picture in it. So when you go to see the place, sometimes it's a bit of a shock and a surprise because it's not like what you imagine. Sometimes it's more beautiful, more engaging than you thought. But we feel we are walking in familiar terrain, but it turns it from maybe a one-dimensional page description and our imagination into a physical reality. And I think it gives a joy to the heart for people to feel, here I am in the land that I have been immersed in through scripture, perhaps all their lives. And it's impossible really to describe what that does. It did it first to me when I first traveled to the land when I was 21 years old, long way back. And even now today, I find there are moments in which I'm absolutely transported into a type of heavenly experience. And then I think reading the scripture in those places, because that's what we do. We go to a holy site. We don't rush in and rush out like you say. We approach it prayerfully and thoughtfully, helping people to understand. And then we stop and we take it in. We look around us, we listen, and then we listen to the scripture. And maybe the chaplain will give a brief reflection connecting the place, the scripture, and our own lives in it, so that we are pondering in each place rather than rushing around. One of the things that people say to rather diminish pilgrimage is it's running where Jesus walked.
Right.
Because people see these pilgrim groups manically sort of running around. We don't run. We walk and we stop and we stand. We stand and we ponder. And that's, I think, something really important. And it helps then for those places to become a memory that people cherish when they come home, and people say over and over again with almost, as it were, monotonous regularity, but it always thrills me. I will never read the Bible in the same way again.
Yeah.
And when you hear the scripture, say, for instance, of the Transfiguration on Mount Tabor, and it's a sort of strange story that challenges our rationality, but it's enticing theologically and emotionally. But when you've been on Mount Tabor and you've heard the reading of the Transfiguration, when you're home and on the Feast of the Transfiguration, you're hearing that story, you are immediately transported to what you saw and heard there. So the memories of pilgrimage comes back through the liturgical year, not just one time, but every single time. And there is nothing other than having your feet on the ground in those places that can replicate that spiritually.
So true. In fact, my own experience in 2016 on Mount Tabor, that was an introduction to Bible lands. And the day before we went to Tabor, we had been to Tel Megiddo, which is, of course, in Latin, what is transformed into Armageddon. And so we had looked out at the Jezreel Valley, which is that plain where every army traversing north or south had met in every great battle for eons, which is why, of course, St. John the Divine imagines that the great final battle will be there at Armageddon. And then the next day we went out to Mount Tabor, the Mount of Transfiguration, and I realized in a flash that you look down from the other direction from Mount Tabor into the Jezreel Valley. And it occurred to me that it very likely could have been that when Jesus has been transfigured and then sets his face down the mountain to Jerusalem, he's been gazing down on the plain of Armageddon. And he's been recognizing the destruction that humans have caused to other humans. And it is with that image in his heart and mind that he sets his face toward the Passion. And it has changed my own relationship with the Transfiguration and the Passion ever since that moment. The other, much less serious and more humorous example of that is for me. For years, I had been preaching about Jesus traveling the dusty roads of Galilee. And then I traveled to Galilee and saw how green and verdant it is and realized, oh, I've got to change my preaching entirely. So it is in all of those ways. It just transforms, obviously, the way that you think about it. Well, talk to us then. We've talked about this first experience that people have, and the way in which it transforms your vision, it transforms your life. We've had someone in the chat ask about Women of the Bible pilgrimages. When will those be offered again? Those are what I call that, and the Sharing Perspectives course, where you have brought Muslim and Jewish and Christian pilgrims together. Those are what I think of as second level pilgrimages, where people have attended the Palestine of Jesus or the Footsteps of Jesus or the Introduction to Bible Lands, which are really the college's 3 first level pilgrimages. Talk to us about those second level pilgrimages, but also what you've already mentioned once today as solidarity pilgrimages, given what's happened in the land in the last, what's really been happening in the land for the last 80 years, but certainly has been accentuated in the last 2. Talk to us a little bit about your vision for the second level pilgrimages going forward, either those that have already been on the books, like Women of the Bible, but also some opportunities for solidarity pilgrimage and what those might look like and how they might look a little different than they have in the past.
Yes, and also you said to say something about the uniqueness of St. George's
Yes,
College pilgrimages.
please,
I think
please.
that's really important, that we call, we have a name, the college, and it's sometimes slightly gives people the wrong impression that we're an educational establishment where people get their qualification diplomas and they're with us for a semester or maybe a year or whatever. We don't do that. The name is a hangover from when the college was founded to be a seminary for Palestinian clergy or training clergy. And that never actually came to be because there were never enough Palestinians to be able to sustain a whole college. So the name of the college then was adopted for the Anglican Centre for Pilgrimage in the Holy Land. But we maintain an ethos of education because we take very seriously the academic learning that underpins, I think, the very best pilgrimages. We're not speaking at degree level or postgraduate level. We're talking at a grassroots level that actually everybody can understand, but will stretch people according to where you are in your own journey. Clergy, lay, bishops, academics, anybody can experience this in a way that raises their level of understanding and raises their level of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. But our course director, who is the senior teacher on every course really, and at the moment is Rodney Aist, who is a Methodist. His PhD.
But we don't hold that against him.
It's one of the assets that he brings to us. And his PhD study was in medieval Holy Land pilgrimage. So he will always say to pilgrims that you're not only walking in the footsteps of Jesus, but you're walking in the footsteps of those who have walked in the footsteps of Jesus. So we see ourselves, and this has become much more explicitly so with Rodney, that we're learning about the traditions of pilgrimage that come before us, and that we are maintaining and sustaining the idea of pilgrimage that goes right back really to the 4th century, when Queen Helena, the mother of Constantine, who came to protect and then found churches on the ancient sites of the Christian story, and learning those ancient traditions and feeling that we're walking with those who've walked before, I think also deepens the experience of pilgrimage. So we want people to have that sense. and his academic understanding, and we're looking at the history, and we're looking a bit at the archaeology, and we're looking at the theology, but in accessible ways for people. It's not just a Cook's tour. That might be a British translation or a British idiom, but a tourist's guide to these places. We are coming as Christians with the wealth of tradition, theological and historical, so that it's a profound experience, not a superficial one. However, that can suit some people. It's not what we do. So yes, the first level courses are those ways of making sure that you see all the main sites and that you encounter them deeply. But we know that people imagine they're coming for the experience of a lifetime, and they think, right, this is me. I've always wanted to go to Israel, Palestine. I've always wanted to go to the Holy Land. This is me, my life's chance. By the end of it, so many people say, do you know, I think I'm going to have to come back again, because I've been so engaged, but I don't feel I've been able to properly take notice, because my mind gets blown every time I go somewhere, and I want to go back and spend it and see it in a different way. So they start to plan their second, and we know many people who've been 4, 5, 6 times, but maybe not just in the same way every time, because you've got some different questions, you've got some specifics. So the level 2 courses that you have mentioned enable people to come, but with a different frame of reference, or a sharpening of a vision into the issues. So women of the Bible, the Holy Land and the arts, interfaith, pilgrimage, and those help to make the pilgrimage experience a fresh and a slightly different experience. You're still going to go to the Holy Sepulchre. You're still most likely going to go to the Basilica of the Nativity in Bethlehem, and you're going to go to Nazareth, but looking in different eyes, and maybe with a guest lecturer alongside Rodney. And those guest lecturers bring something really, really special, and mean that people can engage. So if those that are listening say, well, I've been on pilgrimage, I've been to the land, I don't need to go again, although they might have a yearning, we can give a slightly different experience that doesn't just feel like the exact repeat of what's happened before. Rodney says, he's got a lovely definition of pilgrimage, and it's actually a quote from Richard Niebuhr, the American 20th century American theologian. And he said, a pilgrim is a person in motion, passing through territories not their own, seeking something we might call completion, or perhaps clarity, a goal to which the Spirit points the way. Mm. And I think that's a beautiful description. It's not limiting or constraining, it's actually opening. And it is that sense of newness, some of which will be challenging. And then we would want to add to that it's actually encountering, as a person in motion, you're encountering God, you're encountering the places from Scripture, but also you're encountering the people. And for us at St. George's College, this is every bit as important as visiting the holy and historic places. It's engaging with the context now. And so, for instance, our solidarity pilgrimages have really majored on meeting the people now, because the testimony of what this is doing to people, Palestinians, but actually also Israeli Jews, some of whom, those that we work with, are also working against the oppressive practices of the current Israeli government, and they're working for something which is more holy, more with more integrity, and uncovering the truth of human living and how we live as communities. So we want people to have the experience of hearing the voices of those who are striving for better in this land, and hearing the ordinary experience of Christians, whether it's in the West Bank in our churches there, or our churches in Israel proper, and other faith communities too, so that people go home without not having all the answers, because that's absolutely impossible. I don't have all the answers, and I've lived there for 7 years and tried to expand my mind all the time about what to do and what to think and how we go forward. But to have far more of a sense of a lived experience of the reality of it, countering a lot of misunderstandings, prejudice, and disparaging comments about a situation that people talk about from a long way away without understanding at all. And all of these are the sort of the wealth of ways in which we try to give a deep and a rounded experience, not just flying in to visit places and flying out again, but encountering people.
Two things that you've said that I think are the distinguishing features. First is the expertise that our course directors bring. As you said, Rodney is a global expert, and so when he is leading a course and he's talking to us about the symbolism and myth and reality of the Jordan River, or the history of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, that to have that sort of, which I think really, Rodney being a Methodist notwithstanding, is so much about how, generally speaking, Anglicans want to engage. They want to, they of course want to engage their hearts, but they also want to engage their minds. And that is certainly distinctive, if not unique, is the ability to teach in a way that forms. And the only thing I think more important than that is our engagement with the people of the land, not just the land, but the people of the land, to spend time behind the West Bank wall, engaging with the living stones, engaging with Palestinian Muslims as well, to worshiping in Nazareth or wherever with the living stones. It is so much more than simply pulling up in a bus, seeing a site, and driving away. It's so much more.
Well, and one of those sort of not unique but rare experiences, because we've got such good relationships with the people of Jerusalem and everywhere else, we have very good relationships with the governing body and the hierarchy of Al-Aqsa Mosque
Yeah,
compound,
absolutely.
what the Jews call Temple Mount. And the vast majority of pilgrims that go to Jerusalem, if they go, and some aren't interested to go to Al-Aqsa, we ensure people do go there. But most pilgrims won't be able to go inside the two holy buildings of the Dome of Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque itself, not just the compound, but
No, I have been inside both, thanks to St. George's College.
and because we have that relationship, and when I request or we request a group to visit, they will always give us the opportunity to go inside, which we do. And that then hearing the account of what the buildings and the history means to a Muslim, that itself is an experience which 90%, certainly 80% of pilgrims will never have an opportunity to have. And that arises out of the relationships that we have, because the college has been around a long time and we are an institution of the Diocese of Jerusalem. We are local, even though I'm an international, but people know that the college remains and that we are of the people of the land.
It's also worth noting that our pilgrims tend to be able to interact with the Archbishop and the Dean, and there are opportunities to interact with the Anglican leaders of the Diocese of Jerusalem, which would not happen for most pilgrims in other instances.
Exactly.
So I do want to mention there are a couple of folks who have asked in the chat about how to support other ministries in the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem, things like the Princess Basma Center, Al-Ali Hospital, and we would direct you to our colleagues and friends at the American Friends for the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem. Encourage people to go to that website. You can simply Google American Friends of the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem. They are our partners. We engaged with them earlier this week at our annual meeting, and they are the best outlet for Americans, at least, to be able to provide immediate financial resources that then go for the Archbishop's office itself to deploy to all of those institutions and churches across the diocese not just in the Holy Land, but in Jordan and in other places as well, Iran. So please definitely visit. In fact, Elizabeth Bowe has just put their website link in the chat. So while we certainly appreciate and need and value any financial support you can provide to St. George's College through the North American Committee, we also want to definitely point you to the American Friends and all of the good work that they do. Um, Richard, before we run out of time, how can we? And I also want to mention, because this was asked on the St. George's College website, all of the pilgrimages and pilgrim courses for 2026 are already listed. They are open. The one that I am leading is closed because it is a Diocese of Arkansas pilgrimage, but most of those are open, and you can definitely go now and see all of the offerings for 2026. I understand the 2027 offerings will be up soon, so don't hesitate to St. George's College website and sign up for your pilgrimage today, so that you can make sure that you make your trip to the Holy Land. Richard, how can we, all of those on this webinar who love and support St. George's College, how would you encourage us to best encourage prospective pilgrims?
Well, I mean, actually, on our website, we've got a beautiful short film, that is a sort of testimony of those who've been on pilgrimages before, and gives visions of the cathedral close, the college close, and the land. And if somebody watches that for 8 minutes and they've got the slightest desire and ability to travel, they will be encouraged to do that. So share the video, direct people to the video, and it will transport you to Jerusalem and to the Sea of Galilee and into the desert with, beautiful short shots of the way in which we encounter the desert. Don't just sort of drive through it saying, wow, imagine what it must be like for Jesus to be in that desert. We stop and we stay, and we give people often half an hour just to go and find a quiet space, not in any danger, because you're never more than a loud shout away from anybody else, and to pray in the desert. And you get that vision from looking at this film. And one of the other, I think, very helpful things about the college's pilgrimages is what we call open registration. So anybody can go to any of the pilgrimages. You can go as an individual. You can go as a couple. You can go as a small group of friends, or as a large parish group, because we just keep filling up any individual courses until they're full. So if a parish group comes and brings 20 people, but your parish has got no interest in engaging in the wider world, it's sort of really locally focused, you can just sign up, you'll go on that one, and you'll find friends from different parts of the world who you become pilgrim travelers with, and you'll make friendships for life. So some people feel, I'll never be able to go on pilgrimage because my rector's not interested, my church's not interested, or maybe you don't even have a church where you've found a spiritual home. You can still come on pilgrimage, and you will find a community, because we shape the short-term Christian community from the day of arrival until the day you leave. And then many people stay in touch through now WhatsApp groups.
I am a witness to that. My first pilgrimage, I had received a grant to travel. I simply signed up for a course. I knew no one when I got there, and I have made Christian friends across the world. There were many pilgrims from Europe, from Australia, from Britain who were on that pilgrimage, and I have stayed in touch with them for the last 10 years. So truly, that is the case. Absolutely.
Thank you for being the living proof of what I'm saying. It's really
well,
helpful.
and I definitely encourage people. Elizabeth Bowe has put on the chat St. George's College website, the North American Committee website, and the specific video that Richard references. And if your heart is open to pilgrimage to the Holy Land, but you need that extra nudge of the Spirit, watch this video. Everyone on the North American Committee has been to the Holy Land at least once, many of us more than once. We watched this video on Tuesday afternoon, and we were all ready to sign up to go again. So one should definitely do that. I'd like to tell one anecdote, which maybe more than anything else is emblematic for me about what makes St. George's College different. I would not have thought of this, except that you mentioned the access that on Haram al Sharif, the Temple Mount, that St. George's pilgrims often have that others who come through other means will not have. We had been in the West Bank the day before. This was my most recent pilgrimage, the 2018 pilgrimage, and a young woman, Angela, whose family owns the shop that often pilgrims go and purchase wares at in the West Bank. Angela had come over to East Jerusalem and was with us the next day. We all made it on to the Temple Mount and realized Angela was no longer with us. And Angela, simply because she was Palestinian, had been stopped. And she ultimately caught up with us, but she had been detained for no good reason for half an hour while the rest of us moved on to the Temple Mount. Then we got on to the Temple Mount. Ultimately, she found her way to us and we walked around together. And while we were simply walking around, we were not in Al-Aqsa, we were not in the Dome of the Rock, we were simply walking around on the surface. She was stopped again and removed from the Temple Mount. So we caught up again with Angela at lunch. And I made sure that I sat with her and I said, how are you not apoplectic? Like, how is it that you're not furious? And Angela at the time was 20, 19. She shared with me, I learned more in that lunchtime conversation at table with Angela than I learned in the other 10 days or 12 days of the pilgrimage, because she shared with me what it was like to live in her skin. There's that quote in the Harper Lee novel of the American South, To Kill a Mockingbird, where Atticus Finch, the father, says to his daughter Scout, "You never truly understand another person until you walk around in his skin." And while literally, of course, that's impossible, when we break bread with the living stones, the Palestinians in the land, and we see their experience and we hear their stories, it changes us. It changes us at a cellular level in the body and the soul. And we come home different. And so, and that's the St. George's pilgrimage difference. It is not like a spiritual vitamin B12 shot where we simply go to the holy sites, reenact our baptisms in the River Jordan, or whatever, and then come home feeling better about who we are spiritually. That may happen too. God willing, it does. But what really happens is that we travel alongside. Our pilgrim footsteps are alongside the footsteps, as Rodney says, of prior pilgrims, but also the people who live in the land. And as I've said recently at an event here at St. Mark's, familiarity breeds understanding, understanding breeds empathy, and empathy breeds a desire to seek peace and justice. And all of those things happen when on pilgrimage with St. George's. And it changes us.
That's so powerful, Barclay. Thank you so much for sharing it. Those stories can be repeated over and over by different pilgrims who've had these types of challenging and transformative conversations with people as they've gone about. And, I think it's true that Palestinian Christians, in fact, all Palestinians, have felt abandoned by the global community in these 2 years, have felt that their suffering has not been properly understood, and that the destruction of Gaza and the deterioration of the experience in the West Bank has gone on unchecked and actually supported by the policies of our governments. And what they really need is to see pilgrims coming back and an openness to hear from them about what it has meant. So not just, tell me what it's been like, but closely listening and knowing that people will go back and advocate for better policies from our governments and from our church leaders, talking about what needs to be done. It's the embodiment of the belief that we are one body of Christ. And when one suffers, all should suffer and pay attention to it. So actually, when people say to me, you've told us all of these terrible things about what's going on, but what can we do now if this tentative, sort of partial, inadequate peace plan can move forward step by step, and we pray with all our heart that it can do? The best thing anybody can do to support us is to come.
Just come, for sure.
Because being with the people will be the thing that lifts the spirit and helps people to feel, after years of economic suffering, apart from everything else, just the collapse of the pilgrim and tourist economy has created so much poverty and hardship, that actually coming back, that sense that people are coming back to be with us, will be what helps people to feel we're coming through. We're coming out of these days of darkness and into something better. So that's my heartfelt commendation. Please, the Macedonian Church said to St. Paul and the early apostles, "Come over and help us." And it's that appeal. That's what the Christians of the land are saying. Come over and help us by being with us and sharing with us.
That's so true. I feel sure as soon as we get off this webinar, most of the 2026 courses will fill. How could they not? I will say, if you do go to the website and you don't see in 2026 the particular course you've been looking for, because the 2027 schedule is still in process, I'm not promising on Dean Richards' behalf, but if you know that you have what he said, what Dean Richards said to us at our board meeting earlier this week is, if you know you have a group, 10, 15 people who would want to come for a particular kind of course, please let Dean Richard know that, because as they craft, especially the 2027 calendar, there are no pilgrims signed up yet because the courses haven't been announced. And certainly a course, as long as it's in the menu of courses that the college is able to offer, let the college know what your group may be interested in, and certainly they can try to work with you. Also had a question about how other Diocese of Jerusalem ministries fit into St. George's pilgrimages. Certainly, many of the ministries of the Diocese of Jerusalem consist of the diocesan parishes, and we do engage with and worship in those churches. Also, I'll speak specifically to the Princess Basma Center. I know that there are many pilgrims who, on their own time, or because they have other connections, because there are some free opportunities, some windows of free time worked into pilgrimages at St. George's, can visit Princess Basma Center, especially if that's a particular interest of yours, and the college can certainly help facilitate that. I also want to answer a question that has been asked of me, because pilgrimages at St. George's are ground only. Pilgrims are responsible for planning your own air travel. In the days of Expedia and Kayak and other travel websites, that's enormously easy to do, but the college can arrange for you airport transfer from the airport to St. George's College, and more importantly, because so many flights leave early in the morning on the way home, can arrange airport transfer from the college back to Ben Gurion Airport. So that the small rock logistics like those should not be an impediment to anybody who's considering making travel plans on pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Those are low-hanging fruit, easy to take care of, and can be done seamlessly. I want to thank again my good friend, Dean Richard Sewell, for your faith, for your witness, for your courage. I want to thank my colleague and friend Andrew Sherman, to whom I am passing the baton as the new president of the North American Committee. And I certainly want to thank all of our friends at the Episcopal Parish Network for all that you do to raise the profile of St. George's College, to remind us all of the importance of going on pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And with that, we will sign off and say, go in peace to love and serve the Lord.